Welcome, everyone, to Two Guys in Hockey Talk. My name is Pawel the Cat with my wonderful co-host, Evan Renaerts. How you doing, Evan?
Hey, I'm doing fabulous. Thanks for prepping everything tonight. Been a busy beaver. Pretty much everyone, I'm going to be honest with you right up front, because I've been so busy, I didn't get to do a lot of prep around the NHL. So my co-host and the wonderful man who is in charge, he is going to level out the NHL piece. We also have a special guest with us tonight. We'll be introducing him. He'll be coming on at 7:30 though. So guys, just a heads up, it will be 7:30 that our guest will be coming on here tonight. We'll tell you more about him a little bit later. Val, tell everybody a little bit about how they can follow us and what they can look forward to.
For sure. We are here every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We are on Facebook. Give us a follow. We're all posting daily. We have a website, twoguysinhockeytalk.com, where we get regularly writers writing for us, like Grant Cummins coming for us and writing about Boston and all the changes happening there, myself. And we are on YouTube. So give us a follow. We appreciate the subscription. It really helps us. And we're also on what's it called? Twitter / as Evan like to call it, X. And we are found at hockey_2 or at REV. That is where you can find both of us, because we always share posts, have conversations with you guys, talk all things hockey, whether it's NHL, AHL, PWHL, whatever you want. We've got all our former guests online, and these are our partners: Puckpedia, Kalkaska Battlers, Invincible, the great song you heard at the beginning by Penny Billionaires, who are on Spotify. Go give them a listen. And JR Web Design. If you need a website designed, you go find it there. Evan, it's been a busy week, even though the trade deadline was last week. I know that there's a lot happening, but I want to get started with one thing first, while you sip on that yummy beverage. And whoever you are out there, let us know what you thought of the trade deadline. But we are looking right now at Mikko Rantanen and the saga that was. Now, for context, people should know that Mikko Rantanen was a Colorado Avalanche. There was disagreements about his contract. He gets traded to Carolina. Comes as a shocker. He's shocked. Colorado shocked. The whole world of hockey is shocked. And then there's an offer. There's an offer of over $100 million for that contract. Hey, Kyle, great to see you from you. Hope you're doing well. We're going to get into the Bruins a little bit later. But Mikko Rantanen finally decides, holds up the whole deadline of who's going to go where, because there was teams competing for him. And it end up being Dallas, where he goes to and signs an 8-year, $12 million contract. And in return, Carolina gets some picks. They get Logan Stankoven, amongst a few other pieces. And we now know that Mikko Rantanen has made the Dallas area his home. Your thoughts on this whole trade and what this means? Because it's coming out now that Rob Brind'Amour indicated in his conversations with Mikko Rantanen that there was only 4 places in the NHL that Mikko Rantanen would want to play. And there's been speculations about where that is. Some rumblings are Vegas, Toronto, potentially Edmonton, maybe, and Dallas itself was there. But there's a few other names out there. Your thoughts on this whole situation?
Did you mention Florida?
I did not mention Florida.
Yeah, I think Florida was one of them. Dallas was his primary. That was where he wanted most. They wanted to get the most. And the truth was, Toronto was one of them that had a lot of interest, but Rantanen didn't specifically mention that. But Marner would not consider to move his no-move clause. So let's talk about him when we're done the Rantanen. Let's go back to Rantanen. You got the saga that was, holding everything up. That was an absolute hoop show. And the reason is, okay, do you think it was okay for Brind'Amour to come out and talk about this publicly because it looks bad on the owner, or does it look bad on him? Like, who's it look bad on? I think that they needed to save their image and say, hey, we did everything possible. This is on the player. But I worry, because I think they didn't want to look bad, that this looks bad, that players like him don't want to go to Carolina.
I agree and I disagree. I think Carolina took their shot. They tried to offer him. They wanted a big name. Eric Tulsky, who's become the GM this year after Don Waddell headed over to Columbus, really tried to make a splash. Colorado played the long game here, thinking that they could outbid essentially Rantanen his agent. And it seemed like that was going to be a shoe-in because they had their internal cap and they were going to go past McKinnon. But as it stands, they had to trade him because they could not make it fit. It was a shock for him. It was a shock for a lot of people across the hockey world. And he did play in Carolina for a couple of games, but he struggled. Granted, it's a lot when you have to uproot your whole life and move and get accustomed to a different system. And of course, Brindamore has his own system to play. Not everyone fits into that system. We know that. Players don't always gel with coaches. And Carolina tried. They were able to get out of this a little bit because, again, they did get something back, and they did get Stankoven, who's going to be a heck of a player. And Dallas got their top 6 guys and is going to be a beast in the West. So I think Brindamore's comments were interesting in terms of how they approached it, but I think he's also defending guys there, especially Sebastian Aho, who's also a leader, not the captain, but he's an assistant captain there in Carolina, and he wants to stand up for his guys and say, listen, this is a great place to play. There's a lot Carolina can offer, and they are a playoff team almost every year, which is very hard to make the playoffs, Evan, but they're there and they're competing and they're trying to make the best of it. So it's not a good fit. It happens. Players have that right to play where they want to choose to play. That's their prerogative. But he ended up going to Dallas. We'll see how the next 8 years go with him there in that top 6. Go ahead.
Yeah, just like you said, players have a right to play where they want to play based on UFA because otherwise their rights are held. But just like owners and teams have a right to trade who they want to trade if it's in there, or even ask to trade, to waive. There are no waive clauses. What did you say about the contract and McKinnon in Colorado?
That they had a kind of an internal cap and they weren't going to go above it. I believe the offer was 11.75 according to reporting. So they weren't going to go higher than that for him. I mean, they could have made it work with what he got now, but I think the initial reports were that he wanted between 13 and 14 million.
Okay, so that's where the error is coming in. I've tweeted, if you go over to @REV, he was willing to go at 11.75. He was public about that. Everyone was saying 13 to 14, but his agent is even saying they didn't put an offer on the table. So that's why it was a shock to him. It was a struggle to get traded. Carolina did not do any due diligence. They just made the trade. And that's on them. They should have looked further into this. They should have asked if they could re-sign this player. They acted like this was all sweet. So I think that's why they made him look bad. I think it's unfair. It makes a lot of people I see saying, well, Rantanen should have, yes, he had the right, but he's kind of being selfish. He'll only go to these guys. No, you remember Sebastian Aho is over there. He's a fellow Finn. This could have been a good fit. This was not about that. It was about, I think, where the location was, where his family is, what's easy. There's stuff behind the scenes. I'm okay with him doing this. He didn't come out and say it outrightly. I feel like they had to move so quick and they were just kind of shell-shocked that he didn't even want to really sign. And I do feel bad because it took him a while to decide. This felt like a Johnny Gaudreau that he didn't really know. But that's because he got shell-shocked. He didn't know it was coming. And that's, I think, on the Carolina Hurricanes.
I think it's a bit of both. I mean, both sides. They made him an offer during the Four Nations tournament, which was back in February here.
13.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so it was north of 100 million, right? And they had the right to sign 8 years, so you can kind of dissect what that looked like. Probably around the 13.5 million.
Yeah.
But again,
it's about money.
Yeah, and Carolina is a great place to potentially win. I mean, the biggest Carolina issue that they have every year in the playoffs, as you know, Evan, is scoring. And that's why they thought, hey, we can get a good player here who can put up easy numbers and score. And he's got some big numbers this year even. So, there's a lot going on in terms of the movement. But what I think this will also impact is Mitch Marner and Toronto, because one of the things that when Toronto was pushing aggressively for him, according to Nick Kypreos, is the fact that Carolina asked if they could potentially swap for Mitch Marner. Makes sense. So the Toronto Maple Leafs, Brad Treliving, approached Mitchell Marner and they said, hey, would you be open? And he had the right, because he has his no movement clause. He said, nope, I don't want to go. and he's going to wait with his agent till the offseason to decide what he wants to do and what's best for his future. But this is another big guy that's going to be hot on the market this offseason. And regardless of how Toronto does in the playoffs, Evan, I mean, he's going to command at least 12 to 13 million minimum, because he's looking at it and he's saying, listen, I'm one of the best passers and playmakers in the game. I want to make big coin. Can Toronto make it work with the cap? Especially since they were willing to go after Rantanen, right? So clearly they were thinking, what is life potentially like without Mitch Marner? But also, what if we can have both Rantanen and Marner? And I mean, anything is possible in an alternate universe, but this is where we are. So it was definitely an interesting thing. Now, with Kyle here and Bruins kind of selling off everything, the other big trade of the day was Brad Marchand. And you guys can go back and look at all the trades that had happened, but clearly Brad Marchand and the Boston Bruins organization did not see eye to eye for their final thing. So it looks like he's going to be a pest in the Florida organization, playing alongside more well-known pests as Sam Bennett, as well as Matthew Tkachuk, who's still injured, but he can play. Imagine going up against that line, and your thoughts on the trade of Mr. Brad Marchand going to Florida. And that was his only team.
Well, isn't it that crazy, Brad Marchand going to the very place where you would consider their arch rival? Just before I go there, can I just say this? We'll go there, by the way, Zil. You're asking about the Pacific Division. I see. Okay, go ahead and put that up. You see that Zylstra has chimed in here. She wants to say, who cares about Marchand?
Well, the Boston Bruin fans, and quite a few, including Kyle.
Yeah, so unfortunately, Zylstra, we do have a lot of Bruins fans, and we have a lot of fans that actually don't like him. So some people like your comment. Some people go, what are you talking about? We lost an icon. This is really, you have to understand, when it comes to the situation with Marchand, I am so tired of hearing teams like Calgary last year not trading Noah Hannafin to Edmonton because they're a rival. They're not even competing right now, Calgary. They could have got more out of it. And yet we see now, because Boston's not really going to be competing, they trade him to an arch rival. Stop this arch rival crap. If it benefits your team, make the trade. Did I say this should be a rant? I just get so tired of that. So anyway.
Sorry, Hans is saying, unless there's a way to clone McDavid and bring him to Toronto, peace. I mean, Toronto did well. I mean, they picked up Brandon Carlo. That's their right-handed defenseman. They did pick up Scott Laughton as their third-line center. That's a good pickup. They did have to pay a premium for him, because the thing with the trade deadline this year is that there wasn't a lot of trade, but they were substantial quality hockey trades, Evan, that I found. And teams were stocking up because there were so many buyers on players that they needed to fill holes. And Brad Treliving did that. Now it's up for them to compete. And that's for any other team. So we'll get into the Pacific in a bit, like the Edmonton Oilers. But it seems like the Atlantic right now is a juggernaut. And I don't know how they're going to, like, who's going to come out of there healthy. But that goes to say the same thing for the West, where you have Colorado, who loaded up. They went after Brock Nelson. Yeah. They picked him up and paid a heavy price. They got rid of Casey Middlestad. They went out to get, Charlie Coyle as their third line center. They're looking to be hot. Nathan McKinnon just scored his 1,000th point when they played Chicago. The guy is on a tear. He's willing to do whatever it takes to get a second cup. Look out for them. Look out for Colorado. Look out for Dallas. So speaking of Edmonton, they pick up Jake Wallman, and they're in the Pacific and they're struggling. Your thoughts on what Edmonton does and in terms of their standing right now in the Pacifics?
Oh man, I want to be careful, because I think a lot of our folks don't want to hear about Edmonton anymore. So I'm going to be careful not to go into the Stuart Skinner stuff and what's happening in goaltending. Other than, please watch him play. I love the person, but the way he's playing goal, he's playing like he is an ECHLer. He is out of position. He is turned around. He can't control himself. The goals are coming in every game. He is leaking. I don't care what his numbers were before. They're showing inconsistency. They're not going to win with these two goalies. Calvin Picker will have to be your number one goalie. He's playing like a 2B backup right now. Elvin Pickard's playing like a backup. So Wallman, it's still out there for me. I like the pickup. I like what I saw the first game. I went on. You can follow me at REV and Ev. I liked what I saw first game. Second game, I saw a little bit more. I think he got exposed a bit. It wasn't terrible, so it was okay. I feel like I like to come back to this in about a month and kind of see where we're at around this. But otherwise, they got to figure something out. They're juggling those lines too much. And I think it's time to take Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who's not producing now in the top line, and put him into a third line role. They're already giving other people spots, so let's keep moving them through.
100%. I think really they need to figure that out because they've been 3-10. I know their coach called them out, but there's a lot going on there. Speaking of teams in the Pacific, Vegas didn't do anything, Evan. What's going on there? They tweeted that really cryptic eyes are high, I think, like a few moments, and people thought, oh, this is where Brad Marchand is going, but they didn't do anything. What are we expecting of the Vegas Golden Knights?
I know, right? You're kind of looking at them and you're kind of saying, like, normally this is probably one of the first year that they really stayed what you could call very quiet when it came to the deadline. Guys, go follow one of our partnerships that we have with Puckpedia. With Hart Levine, who's built the site over there, and you'll be able to get kind of where their cap is. You get all the players and what's happening around all that. But can I just say, I want you guys to think about this. They have, right now, only 2 players that are above a point per game. One's played 13. Jack Eichel's doing incredible, 78 points in 63 games, 57 in 50 games from Mark Stone, but Hurdle's below a point. Theodore, he's doing well as a defenseman, almost up there. Barbashev is doing okay, but the truth is they just got a lot of depth. I want to throw some names out: Eichel, Stone, Hurdle, Theodore, Barbashev, Pavel Dorfeev. I'm probably saying that wrong. I've never actually said his name out loud. So Noah Hannafin. I'm just looking at this right now. Pietrangelo, who's off till cap season. I thought they'd take advantage of that cap. They still got Colasar in the deep end. They got Pearson coming in. They got Waugh. They got Brandon Saad. They got Carlson. They got McNabb. They got Holtz, guys. Holtz. Now, he's going to be good for that depth. They still got big, tough guys, Zach McLeod. They got Nicholas Hague. You name it. They have done really good. If you think about their goaltending even, they got Samsonov and Hill. I mean, if one doesn't do as well, the other one will. And right now, Aiden Hill is still running a .904, and that was with a terrible start. So with a 2.6 goals against average. I think that they're just kind of taking their time. They're moving through. I think they finished first in the division. I think the Oilers had it, and they didn't make the moves enough. And I'm sorry, but their goaltending's not coming around unless they go on the street.
I 100% agree. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Now, jumping over to the East a little bit, I know there's been a lot of moves, and you guys can go look up through all of them. We're not going to go through every single, trade, but it looks like Jonathan Quick has re-signed for one more year at $1.5 million with the New York Rangers. Can you just kind of share your thoughts on what he brings to the Rangers and the stability he brings on that back end?
You got to love Jonathan Quick. There's a reason that name Quick was prophetic for his life. That guy is quick. He holds the low spot. If you watch how low he is and how much room he gives up top, but he's got one of the best glove hands. He's got one of the best blockers. He's one of the most athletic goalies I know. His lateral movement from east to west when he's in that rink is phenomenal. Left to right, he can make it happen. He's not turned sideways. So this guy is a perfect, it's not a long term. He's just being able to hold that spot. They don't need to worry about anyone else. And his veteran leadership, so what I'm hearing from some of the agents and stuff talking about him, he is exceptional in that dressing room. So
that is interesting. I'm going to get you to talk to the next story. I'm having some issues on my end here, some technical difficulties, even after all this time. But I'll let you take on the next topic. And the next topic that we wanted to talk a little bit about was the fact that the Arizona Coyotes are suing the Arizona Board of Regents to try and recover 3.5 million security deposit to use on the break of the limit. I don't know if you heard about this. If you saw this story, I'll let you.
Okay, so why don't you do this? I know you'll go ahead, adjust your technical issues. I did not actually hear. I'm interested in what you have to say. This is new for me. I'll let you update everybody, but I do have some stuff for Around the Rink. So I'll take care of that. Why don't I go to Around the Rink, guys, and then you can come back if you're ready.
If you're a fan of hard-hitting, exciting hockey, catch the Kalkaska Battlers.
Around the Rink
is brought to you by the Kalkaska Battlers. Let them be your local hockey heroes.
So, folks, while Pawel's working on his technical issues, again, I just want to thank you. If you haven't been following with us, you can always find us, check us out, come on to our Two Guys and Hockey Talk so you can check things out, find the different former guests that we've had on. We've been trying to keep things a little bit more updated for you. But coming around, why don't we go ahead and do this? I want to talk about a little bit what Darren Drager has brought out some news. If you guys have not heard, I had already got some information that was being sent to me some of the boards. So it's right there in front of me. This is quite live. This has only happened earlier this morning. So a rule has been announced now by U Sports, okay? U Sports, for those that are in the U.S. and other places, is called the University Sports. That's in Canada. So colleges and universities in dealing with hockey. It's been announced hockey players who have played pro will be eligible to play U Sports. You guys have to remember when the NCAA started going and making their changes, this affected Canadian colleges where all the CHL players went. So now what's happening is those players, as they've moved over, they're going to now be able to, they used to have to be sitting out from professional for at least a little over a year. But now they'll be effective in the fall. So young players that were pro can now actually come along. So that's an interesting piece. The other thing that I want to mention, so I've been working in with the NCAA stuff. A lot of people are saying, wow, did you guys know this year you are looking at almost 50% of the NCAA will be, close to 50% will be Canadian players. Why? Because there is over, where I go, the commits right now, these numbers, you got to remember from the USHL. So there's 59% are committed American. Right now it's 30%. There's going to be more, and European is 11%. Remember, the USHL has been sending people to the NCAA for a while. However, what's going to end up happening here now is the commits. There's 92, guys. Some of these have already been pre-signed the moment the rules changed. 92 commitments to play in the NCAA that are from the Canadian Hockey League, never allowed before. 92. BCHL used to have 40 to 60. They're down to 32. Remember, some of these were made earlier commitments, so they had to honor them. The USHL is 26. The NAHL, 23, who is an independent, non-sanctioned American league, like the BCHL down in the United States, they have 23 commits. And then when you start going through junior hockey throughout the rest of Canada, which is US Hockey Canada sanctioned, you actually have approximately another 14. European, there's only 2 into the NCAA. Now, what I want to mention here is, because not everybody catches this, is those commits have pushed American players out. But please recognize this. A lot of these CHL players have never done studies like they're going to do studies. Going, especially to an Ivory League or a prep, when you go to some of these most difficult places, this is going to be tough because you still have a GPA score you got to keep up in the NCAA. Right now, you're going to see a massive change. I think it's going to level out a bit next year. That there's still going to be more, but you're going to find at some point these guys are going to drop. They're going to drop because they're not used to it. They're used to playing and doing studies in high school. Even Canadian universities do not have the same kind of workload that they make you do in the NCAA. And depending, we're talking Div 1 here, everyone, okay? The other places that they'll go in to score will be actually different. So understand that. That is like one of the most difficult. I want you to catch this, though. the North American Hockey League is struggling. And the reason that they're going to struggle is because now they're going to send less people to the NCAA. This is not just hurting the BCHL. This is going to hurt all those non-sanctioned groups and places that are actually out there, okay? So just take a notice of that. Now, I was in contact today. I did have some time. And so one of the things that I actually found out, I'm just trying to make sure I have my numbers here in front of me. So I was talking to an agent. Now, an actually agent who does a lot of work with NCAA. And he says, most of the major junior clients I have are not interested in NCAA. They're major junior. Remember, CHL. They're not interested in NCAA. They want to go pro to make more money, and then they're going to retire. So he's saying, let's see what happens when all these kids have to actually learn to study and stuff. It's probably going to be more. So those are some of the interesting facts around the NCAA and stuff like that. And I'm really interested to see how this is, essentially, how this is going to roll out. So anyway, go ahead.
No, well shared. I mean, you know, you see the program growing, so this will be interesting to kind of observe for the next few years to see what happens. But there's a lot going on, and I do apologize. For some reason tonight, my computer decided not to work. So, like with anything,
technology. All right, guys. So that's around the rink. We'll come back to some more NHL news. And we're just waiting in on, so we'll drop from our NHL news as soon as we know that our guest actually gets on here.
If you're a fan of hard-hitting, exciting hockey, catch the Kalkaska Battlers.
Around the Rink
is brought to you by the Kalkaska Battlers. Let them be your local hockey heroes.
So as I was indicating earlier, the Arizona Coyotes, although they have moved already to Utah, it seems like the group, Alex Mariuolo and the ownership group there, even though the rights to the team still exist within the NHL vault, essentially, they are suing the Arizona Arena there because they had signed a 3-year lease agreement. But of course, because the team was moved, they are actually trying to renege the $3.5 million back from what they had agreed upon for the third season, which of course isn't happening given the fact that the team is no longer there. Now, the Tuscan Roadrunners are still there. That's part of that affiliation, but they're now connected essentially as the farm team for the Utah.
Okay, so just for clarification, who is suing who?
Alex Mariuolo and his group are suing the arena area and the Arizona state.
This is separate from the Utah Hockey Club.
Yes, they don't have anything to do with this.
Yeah, because he owns the rights, right?
Yeah,
so,
and because essentially it was a lease that was signed, but it no longer is valid, essentially. And I don't know all the legal logistics. You guys, if you're lawyers out there, you can let us know. Essentially what had happened is that they're trying to get reimbursed for that extra, and I don't know if they put a deposit down or what it was. More is to come with this story, so we'll be monitoring it. But essentially that money was put down for that 3-year agreement, and they backed out essentially or the contract was ended given the move. So I don't know how you approach that in a court system, especially in the US. So it'll be interesting to follow and report that. But there's something to monitor and observe with that.
Wow, that's absolutely crazy, guys. All right, guys, so we're getting ready to bring on our guest here. This is a little different for you. We bring on at 7. We're looking at moving our guests around different times because we want to surprise you every single day. Guys, now my guest, I did not verify the enunciation, so when you come on in just a moment, you can correct me if I have your last name wrong. The point is we follow what you're doing. Guys, in just a moment, we're going to bring on our guest headliner here. It is Jim Behringer. He is an NHL writer for the Full Press NHL. He is chief editor. This guy is busy. He's the head writer. So we're going to talk more around the NHL and some of the things, get his feel of what's happening. So why don't we go to our guest headliner?
Guest headliner, brought to you by JR Web Design. Is your website stuck in the Stone Age? Well, you need JR Web Designs. They'll craft you a website that's as awesome as our show.
Welcome, Jim. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, guys. Thank you. And you got the last name right.
I was shocked. I was like, okay, is it Behringer or is it Behringer?
You got it right. It's Behringer. Yes. Yes, it is.
Man, thanks so much for taking the time. Before we get going a little bit further in, maybe tell everybody what are all the hats you're wearing, and what do you do?
Yeah, so as you said, chief writer, editor at Full Press Hockey. I also do work over at NHLRumors.com as well as RG Media. Also have a podcast up, Full Press NHL podcast up on YouTube as well. I do a lot of stuff, cover the NHL. Started with the Devils and kind of worked my way in just doing like the NHL stuff, just around the league. I still follow the Devils in the New York area because that's where I'm from and that's where I live. But, always loved hockey, always just like to keep my nose in my hat in like every part of the game because the game is so great and you just don't want to, just cover one section. And if you have a love for something, you should follow it all.
That's great. So now that you've had, and the whole world of hockey has had a few days to kind of digest what happened at the trade deadline, what are your initial thoughts on what had happened? I know people love to kind of discuss winners and losers, but maybe who you think did well and who do you think kind of maybe dropped the ball a little bit or didn't really do anything and surprisingly just kind of omitted trading anyone?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I like the way you phrased it because like everybody wants to talk winners and losers, especially out of drafts and trade deadlines and free agency. But to me, like if you look at it, I look at two divisions and you better be prepared to come out of that Atlantic and Central Division. To me, like those are going to be battles. Whoever finishes second and third, I mean, obviously the standings right now are what they are, but I mean, imagine you get a Florida, Tampa first round matchup, Florida, Toronto, whatever the combination is there. And then in the Central, obviously Winnipeg's up there in the top of the division, but Dallas and Colorado on the storyline. Mikko Rantanen goes to Dallas. I like what they did before that, actually, with Mikael Granlund and Cody Ceci, to be honest. And then Colorado going down the middle with Brock Nelson, Charlie Coyle addressing needs. I never felt Casey Middlestat was a second-line center. I never understood the Byram trade to begin with, and I didn't think he was going to help them. They addressed their goaltending. They addressed second-line center. The team's clicking. And then, obviously, Winnipeg, I love what they did with Luke Shen, and I love the Brandon Tanev move. Yeah. Then you flip over to the other side, the Leafs, right? They have Scott Lawton comes in. You get Brandon Carlo coming in. I love those moves. Yanni Gourde, Oliver Bjorkstrand to Tampa. And obviously the big surprise with Brad Marchand going to Florida. But I like the deal for Seth Jones. Obviously at the time we didn't know what was going on with Aaron Ekblad. Yeah. But to me, I think those 6 teams, if you look at it, are the quote-unquote winners, but they really impressed me. And on the flip side of it, I look at New Jersey and I understand what they did, but when you have $13 million in cap space and you have assets to move and you're in a battle with Carolina for the second spot in the Metro, there's more things you could have done than just add Cody Glass, Daniel Sprong, Brian Dumoulin, guys like that. I think they could have done a little bit more. The Islanders, to me, should have done more, right? You move Brock Nelson, you get a haul for him from Colorado. Yeah. And from all indications, Kyle Palmieri was going to get a first-round pick. J.G. Pajot was going to get you, a good return. Not maybe what the Nelson return is, but you could have gotten 2 trades from those players equaling the Nelson return. I think that's a big miss to me by the New York Islanders.
So that's good. I was gonna just ask you here, Jim. So around the Devils, nothing much happened. We know that they're building up there. They've got a lot of good pieces. What do you think happened there, or do you think that they're just this is not their all-in year?
I think they were in their hands, were in everything, but I think they just didn't want to give up the assets to get the players. I had heard they were in on Mikko Rantanen, but I'm not sure Carolina really wanted to trade him within the division. I know they were trying to go after Brock Besser in Vancouver, but again, Vancouver's dilemma. We want to push for the playoffs. Do we really want to wave the white flag? That's a conundrum for Vancouver. They tried to go after Dylan Cousins. They tried to go after Casey Middlestat, Scott Lawton, Ryan O'Reilly, and Braden Shen, but they didn't want to move off of Nemec yet. And Dawson Mercer is their second-line center right now. So if they weren't getting a center in return, I don't think they could have moved the pieces that teams wanted. So I think they're all right, well, we're just going to settle, help our bottom 6. Let's see what our guys have in the room. Because scoring's been an issue for this team the whole year, and they definitely needed a top 6 scoring winger, and they probably should have gotten one. But again, did they want to move the assets? say to themselves, hey, we'll get in, we'll see what we can do. I think they should have gone all in. Look, to me, I think using injuries is an excuse because Dallas has two of their top guys out and they made the big moves that they made. And, look, whether you're a top team like Dallas or a team like New Jersey, if you have cap space, go use it to go get players that can help you in the playoffs.
100%. Cap space is now essentially its own ammunition when you're going into making a decision. And, when you have Dougie Hamilton and, of course, Jack Hughes, one of the young stars of the game, out, it's tough, especially since he's had such a dynamic year. And you want to reward the team and the players, right? And it's been a while since New Jersey has been out of the playoffs. The last time they were there, that wild battle with the Rangers and them beating them. But I guess what I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on is the Great Eight. He's like, what is it? 9 goals away. We talked about 9 goals away. And what can you say about Washington, given that they were minus 37 in goal differential last season, and yet they're firing on cylinders? They made their moves in the offseason. They traded for PLD, Pierre-Luc Dubois. They got Mangiapane. They got Chychrun. What can you say about that team and about the Great Eight?
I mean, look, that team, to me, I told everybody, I did some season previews and some stuff over the summer, and I said, don't count out Washington making the playoffs. They know how to win in the Metro. They know how to beat New Jersey. They know how to beat every team in that division. Ovechkin's having fun again. They put a really good team together. And you know what? Washington didn't have anybody going to 4 nations. They're all healthy. And they've locked up their goalies. They've done the retool on the fly the right way. They have, again, another team with a lot of cap space. Why? Oshie's hurt, probably not playing anymore. Backstrom's done. He's not playing anymore. And Ovi's having fun. Not only is he having fun scoring goals, the team's winning. That's the big thing. The team's winning. And they're top of the Metro in a battle for President's Trophy. It's like 2010 all over again. And I love the way they're, Patra's coming up. And what a classy move by Ovechkin against the Ducks, right? Had a chance to the open net, could have walked to center ice, get it, sends it over to Patras and Protas, I'm sorry. And he scores, gets his first career hat trick. Dylan Strome's playing well, Sonny Milano, up and down. But the big addition of Chychrun has really settled that defense, gives them another weapon with John Carlson. Logan Thompson, what an addition on the back end. Washington, I didn't see first place coming. I thought they would just be a playoff team. Okay, they'll get wild card 1. I did not see this coming. No way.
What's crazy is I feel when you're looking from the back end, they had John Carlson, even though he's aging, he's very veteran, very savvy. And then you add Jeff Chychrun, which everyone acted like he wasn't that great a defensive player, which he's proving wrong. And then you add Logan Thompson, who actually, why was he cast off? He was probably the best goalie there and prospect. And they're just right now, their GM is looking like GM of the year, man.
Yeah. Washington has done everything the right way. Spencer Carberry, what a great coach he's been for this team. Everybody's buying into the system. They're just having fun as a group, as a team, and they're healthy. That's the big thing for Washington. They're healthy. They're playing well. 2 good goaltenders, playing good defense. And I think, to me, I know we've always said in years past when they've had, the Simmons and oh my God, I'm blanking on it. The Mike Green era, the early Ovechkin eras when they would always win President's Trophies. Be like, oh yeah, Caps should win, lose first round. I think the Caps can actually make a really deep run with the way they're playing. It's just unbelievable, what they've done with retooling on the fly. To me, if you look at a team on how to retool on the fly, that's a team I would want to retool on the fly. Pittsburgh should have taken their model a couple of years ago. I always say this. You go back, I think it was summer of 22. So they just lost the Game 7 Rangers. You had Letang, you had Raquel, you had Malkin, all free agents. That was the year to decide, okay, who do we keep? Letang or Malkin? We can't keep both guys. And I think Brian Burke and Ron Hextall realized that, but ownership was like, well, no, we got Sid, we have these legacy players, we got to try to win. But they made their team worse. And again, it's a double-edged sword because like Kyle Dubas is there, and I tell everybody, it's like, yeah, he's the GM, but is he really making the decisions? Because if he's really making the decisions, this rebuild would have started already.
That's true. That's true. Let's just slightly make a slight move. So very close to Washington. Let's just go north, up into Canada. And so if people follow you, now where can they follow you on X?
At Jim Behringer, so just my name, at Jim Behringer, JIMBIRINGER is where you could follow me.
So you threw out, I believe this was like early this morning, your time, depending where people are right now. If you're in the East Coast somewhere, or if you're in the Midwest, or if you're on the West. So about 14 hours ago, you made a tweet. There's been lots of debate around the rookie thing. Montreal Canadiens, Lane Hutson. What's your thoughts around this guy and what's happening in this guy's life right now?
I mean, to me, if you look at, I think the rookie class this year for Calder is very, it's, to me, really deep class. To me, what he's doing as a defenseman, and we saw what Mo Seider did winning Rookie of the Year with 50 points, just over 50 points. What he's doing right now, breaking records, having the most assists, to me, he's my front runner to win Rookie of the Year, Calder Trophy. I know what Dustin Wolf is doing in Calgary. If the Calgary Flames get in, he'll probably win it, but I think to me, Lane Hutson's is the clubhouse leader right now. I love what Macklin Celebrini. I saw Celebrini live so many times. This kid is unbelievable with the puck, even off the puck, what he can do. The Sharks have a special player in that kid. Look, a lot of people say, yeah, Sidney Crosby, like all that stuff. He's in his own. He's his own player. He's his own man. He's Macklin Celebrini, but they have a nice young nucleus there in San Jose. And Mishkov's going to be a stud in Philadelphia. He may not be putting up the numbers because of torts, but to me, like, this class is deep, but I love what Lane Hutson's doing with Montreal. He's really changed the dynamic of that defense for the Canadians. Puck-moving defenseman, really helping them on the power play, just giving them an edge that they need back there that they haven't had in such a long time. And to me, that's why, like, when defensemen do things like this, you have to be like, yeah, he deserves to be Rookie of the Year. And in my opinion, right now, he deserves to be Rookie of the Year.
No, and that's fair. And one question that I think people would want to know is that, are you looking towards any prospects in the coming season? Because they're saying it's not as deep of a draft. Evan likes to do his Rev Top 15. We usually try to follow up. We won't do it tonight. Is there a player that you believe people should be watching out for? Are you keeping an eye on the young prospects that are coming through, or someone that fans should be watching more?
Well, I know I know the draft class. I know he's already been drafted, but I'm going to go back to Washington. Riley Leonard. Ryan Leonard, who played for Team USA at the World Juniors, is a kid that you better keep your eyes on when he comes to the National Hockey League. Like, that's a kid that you're going to watch. But Hagen's obviously playing college. Like, I like what he's doing, James Hagen's. He's from the New York area. So, like, those are guys to me. But like I said, the Leonard kid coming out of Washington, like, he's going to be a stud. Oh, Gabe Perreault, too, when he gets to the Rangers, they have a beautiful player when he gets there. They just got to use him right. That's my beef with a lot of these veteran coaches. They don't put him in the right spot. Why do you think Capo Caco's, thriving in Seattle right now, and Filipino's playing well in Vancouver? Like, there's a reason for it.
Well, I would push back with Hedl just because of injury. I think that's
right.
one of the issues. But yeah, Capo Caco has definitely found his game in Seattle and been used by Dan Bilzman much more. I guess the one surprise of this season that we've kind of all seen, and you wrote about it in your last article, which is the Stadium Playoff Series and the Blue Jackets. And you know that the team has had its challenges. They went through some rough patches, losing Johnny Gaudreau. They did a beautiful honor of it. The game looked beautiful. Both Detroit and them were fighting for a playoff spot. Detroit seems to be falling off. But why can we say that Columbus is really a feel-good story this year and that they would benefit from getting into the postseason?
Just because everything that's happened, obviously you said it, like the the tragedy around Goudreau, Monahan signing there. We were looking forward to seeing that tag team again that we saw in Calgary. Like, oh, what is it going to be like when Monahan and Goudreau get back together again? Then we never saw it. And Johnny was so upbeat with talking to so many people around Columbus. He's like, yeah, I'm looking forward to the season. Can't wait to come back. The way Boone Jenner's like rallied this team. Dean Evason's the perfect coach for this team. And, you know, I just think Columbus would just benefit their young group. Adam Fantilli, another special player for them. Kent Johnson's take the next step. Merzlikins, yeah, they lost in a battle with New Jersey because they're battling New Jersey for third in the Metro. But they're trying to, you know, keep that wild card spot as well. But something about those Stadium Series games, the winner of that game usually does well going forward, and the loser kind of like tails off because you're on such a high from playing in the game. That you tail off, and we've seen that with Detroit recently. But Columbus is such a feel-good story to me that they get in there because nobody, let's be honest, coming into the season, even with the tragedy, even if the tragedy doesn't happen, how many people think the Columbus Blue Jackets were actually going to make the playoffs? Then you add this on top of it, the way the league's rallied around them, the way, like, it feels like they're, I don't want to say quote-unquote, like, America's team, because that's like a phrase they use down here when something happens, but like they've come together as a team and they're playing for Johnny, and it's just the group to be around, smiles all around, they're ready, they're just having fun playing hockey, and they would just benefit from the experience because they have good talent and they have veterans there, and they could be a threat again to be atop that Metro division like they were years ago.
So I will, before Evan gets to his question, if you go back to my predictions at the beginning of the season, I had them pretty high up, but I also fibbed and said Washington would have an abysmal season and be at the bottom. And I've admitted that I was wrong about that. So there you go. And Zylstra's saying too, she called it as well, that they would have a amazing season. And I agree. Like, I thought that they had the pieces. The key was the fact that Merzlikins could be able to play a full 50 games plus and have a 900 save percentage. And who would have thought Zach Werenski having a Norris-like season, right? I mean, that right there is good. Now, when you're writing these articles for the Full Press Hockey, what goes into deciding what you're going to write about? Are you deciding kind of what's the current event in the world of hockey, or do you find that you pick and choose specific stories of what interests you?
Like, I look at it like if I'm going to read it myself, like as a fan, like what do I want to see? Like the storyline coming into it. Like, because I'm a big pro wrestling guy too, so I like the storyline aspect of stuff. So, like, going into that game, it's like, well, you know, you looked at it and you're saying, well, when was an outdoor game played this late with this much meaning behind it? I think people would want to read about that. Like, and that was like the big story around it. Detroit, Columbus battling for a playoff spot. We've never really had an outdoor game like this before. That's something to go for. And then if there's like a hot topic, like I know going back to like December when the Rangers were going through their thing and the quote unquote tampering that was going on with Brady Tkachuk and the Senators, and I'm like, I got to talk to some people in Ottawa. And then it was like, yeah, Brady Tkachuk's not going anywhere. So that was like the big story, and I'm like, nope. Brady Tkachuk's not going anywhere, and if you think he's going somewhere, then you're dead wrong because he's not leaving Ottawa. He wants to be there. He wants to win. And it's similar to what's going on in, like, Buffalo, right, with Rasmus Dahlin, like, the reports that come out, and he chirps back. Do I think there should be change in Buffalo? Absolutely. Do I think he's fed up with losing? Absolutely. I would be, too, if I'm a player in Buffalo. But I don't think Rasmus Dahlin is leaving the Buffalo Sabres because he was never a name that was ever brought up. This team has been at the bottom of the Eastern Conference the whole year. You look at Owen Power's name, J.J. Peterka, Dylan Cousins. Those were the guys that came up. Dahlin was an untouchable along with Tage Thompson. I think he told management, he's like, look, we got to make some changes around here. But we got to start winning, too. And you could see it in his face. And he's frustrated by their losing there in Buffalo all the time. So yeah. I think, like, when you look at the current event, then you also look at, okay, what happened in a game, or what's going on with this team that's going to be really interesting. And that's how I decide, like, this story to come up with.
Yeah. Oh, man. So, okay, let's finish. I'm just looking at our time. Why don't we go out with 2 questions? So, Pavel, I'll let you work with him around the whole tampering thing. That's Zylstra's question. But Zylstra has another one here, too. She says she's getting disgusted with the Detroit Red Wings. We already had planned to talk about, we ran out of time earlier. Some things were going that we were covering. The Iser plan, as everyone calls it, it seems to be delayed. I've gone on record. I do not think he's good at drafting. A lot of people have thought that he is, and they've gone back to Tampa, but it wasn't really his doing. It was other people, in my opinion, walking around it. So what's your thoughts around what's happening in Detroit? Because really, they're kind of right in the middle, just below that cutoff line, missing playoffs, not getting good enough drafts. How are they going to pull a Washington?
They got to decide like who their goaltender is going to be and what direction they want to go in free agency, right? Because some of their draft picks have been really good, like Sider, Edvidson. You have Lucas Raymond, who I love, playing for Detroit. Like guys like that, they've hit. But then your free agent signings have not been good. Like, why are we signing Vladimir Tarasenko to a 2-year deal? Andrew Kopp, like, we're getting some of the same players here, mix and match of veterans. And if you don't make the playoffs again, well, the seat that's already been warm is going to be hot for Steve Yzerman in Detroit because he's supposed to be the guy that was supposed to get him back to the playoffs. And I know these things take time, but we saw what happened in Tampa, and I agree. Was it part of Yzerman and part of other people? Yeah, it was a combination. They hit, but you can't hit. Lightning doesn't strike twice, no pun intended, doing the same thing twice. You got lucky once not lucky, but you got the right players in Tampa the first time. Doing it twice is rare to see, and I think, if anything, they might make some changes to who is on the staff drafting, and certain people there might be changes inside management, not Steve Yzerman, but maybe former players that are there that might be moved out because they're missing so much.
So before Pavel jumps in here on wrapping us up here, I just want to make a point, though. I've actually been down in Florida, and a vehicle had been hit with lightning on my way to Tampa because I was going over there to Bouchard Gardens, and literally while I'm driving by, that very vehicle got hit with lightning while it's on fire. Just want to mention. Maybe
that's crazy. That's crazy. That's a rarity.
Maybe it's because lightning hit Detroit, then it hits Tampa. Because lightning only happens in Tampa twice. Okay, anyway.
Oh, your jokes are terrible. But anyways, so Zilstra also wanted to know, how do you believe it would be tampering if a player tries to convince their buddy to come play with them? I mean, players talk. They know that they love playing with each other. We saw how Brady Tkachuk was upset with Norris leaving. But, of course, he's trying to also prop up the new guys coming in, like Dylan Cousins, to play for that team. But how would they go about saying that, like, a player can't convince, hey, you should come play here? It'd be great, right? Especially in the offseason if they're golfing.
Right. I mean, I've never heard about player tampering. Like, the only thing I've heard about is, like, managers and agents, like, getting tampering charges. Like, players talk all the time because now we're getting back to international hockey. And, I'm not, like, hypothetically, right, Brady just played with his brother for Team USA. Yeah. You're telling me he wouldn't want to go play with his brother on a team in the NHL? Like, those dudes hang out. Like, guys hang out, guys go golfing, guys go in, weddings, buddies are in weddings. Like, we see it all the time. Like, yeah, players are going to end up playing with each other all the time. Like, we saw it with Nashville, right, this past offseason, right? Stammer and Marchessault kind of were talking about, oh, maybe if you go here, I'll go here. And that kind of set that up. But again, it doesn't really work. It's not like the NBA where it's just a couple of guys. Like in the NHL, you would need like 5 dudes to just jump ship and make the team run perfectly. Like, I don't think it could work where it's like just a couple of guys. But what's the dream scenario? McKinnon and Crosby play together in Colorado. We're all willing that one to fruition. We want to see it because training buddies train together. So, I mean, that would be, that's the big one that everybody wants. But I think players talk, and they're like, oh, how cool would it be to play? Like, you don't think Brad Marchand playing with Sam Bennett on Team Canada led to Brad Marchand being traded to Florida and Florida being one of the choices he wanted to go to. Like, I think that's some of it, right? Like, these guys talk when they play together. So, you know, it's like, oh, well, you're here. All right, well, I'll talk to my agent. Maybe I can get there. Like, I think it's just players trying to get with their buddies. But, again, to really win and do that strategy, you'd have to take, like, half the team with you and all your friends. And sometimes it doesn't work out.
I think that's why we have GMs and we have players, and not players that are GMs, because unlike LeBron, it's very hard to make a deal, and sometimes you don't always know what's going on and the other moving pieces and the dynamics. But Jim, this has been wonderful for you to come on the show. We appreciate you taking the time for being on the show with your insight. Where can people find you, and where can people go to check you out, to connect with you, to talk all things hockey or any sport, really?
Yeah, Pawel, Evan. Yeah, you guys can get me at Jim Berenger on Twitter. That's probably the easiest one to, you know, everybody still uses it. That's my easy one. I'm on Instagram at JerseyJim33. That's always fun to be on there. Facebook, Jim Berenger. That's usually where I'm at, you know, hanging out, you know, but mostly Twitter. That's where I, you know, talk and chat with everybody, have good conversations. It's always fun to talk hockey, sports, whatever. Want to talk pro wrestling? That's cool too. I'm down with that. Full Press Hockey on YouTube is where my podcast is at. Obviously, fullpresshockey.com, RG Media as well. NHLrumors.com is where you can find a lot of my work as well. So yeah, always a pleasure to come on. Glad to take the time and talk some hockey with everybody here Wednesday night.
Well, we promise to have you on the show again and not do the John Cena in Toronto with The Rock, because that was unrealistic, and you loved seeing the crowd react to that.
I loved it. It was awesome. Brought me back to 96. Hogan, heel turn, NWO, Bash at the Beach. Loved it. It was great. Elimination Chamber in Toronto was awesome. But yeah, like I said, love being on here. Love the show. Love being on here talking hockey. Whatever insight I could do to bring and to everybody. Love the questions and comments as well.
Hey, so Jim, just before you go, I've been in and out of wrestling for many years, dating back to the early days of the Sheik versus Hulk Hogan. I go way back. I actually have friends in professional wrestling, local and that have been around for quite a while. In fact, last year AEW came to Edmonton, Alberta. I was dressed up. They came on for 5 minutes onto our show. Had to take it. I was as Darby Allin, right? Dressed up and get up. I think you and I, when Pavel's gone, I'll contact you. You'll come on the show. We'll talk wrestling references and maybe say what organization or wrestler do they all represent. We'll have a blast with that one, man.
Dude, definitely. And by the way, I'm seeing the Canadian hero, the Canadian legend on Friday. Bret Hart is going to be in New Jersey. He's my hero. Love him. And I can't wait to see him. So I just want to throw that out there, too.
That's awesome. So Zilstra says, my grandpa got me watching Stampede Wrestling. So actually, I'm going to slightly change that, Zilstra. Not Stampede. I picked that up when I moved there in 1984. I watched, starting in 1978, All-Star Wrestling. So it was Gene Kaniski and Don Edwards, I think. It was Don Leo Jonathan, the big giant who my dad had worked at Burns with back in the day. So anyway, yes, excellent, Jim, man. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time. Cheers. Keep your stick on the ice, dude.
Always keep the sticks down, boys. Have a good one. Enjoy.
Cheers. That's so awesome, man. Well, guys, hey, this has been a great night. I'm just going to wrap us up. I'm going to go out with what's the last point you have that you'd like to connect on? Is there anything last thoughts before I do with my hockey history?
No, I think we're into the final stretch before the playoffs are coming up. There's a lot happening. Keep us on your dial, on YouTube, on Facebook. Make sure you're giving us a follow on Twitter/X. We are always there at hockey_2 or Rev and Ev. We are always talking, connecting, discussing all things hockey. Things are going well. And yeah, looking forward to next week's episode. We appreciate everyone tuning in.
Awesome, man. All right, guys, before we say our goodbyes, I just want to go to the last little piece on hockey history.
The Kalkaska Battlers presents Hockey History. Catch the Kalkaska Battlers as they compete in the APHL Check the Skills Speed Heart Make sure you catch a game and experience the thrill of live hockey. Go Battlers!
Hey guys, so in hockey history, I just want to take you back with goaltender Jerry Cheevers. Many are like, who's Jerry Cheevers? Well, he extended his NHL record on this date on March 12th. His NHL record unbeaten streak to 28 straight games. He became 21 wins and 7 ties, or 7 losses, sorry, on March 12th, 1927 in the Boston, there you go, Kyle, in the Boston Bruins, and that's for you, Grant, in a 4-4 tie with the Pittsburgh Penguins. But let me just go a little bit further for you guys and talk just a moment. He was known for his colorful personality, his off-ice antics, and his goaltending prowess. He had an iconic mask. It was the story of his famously stitched mask. I almost went to that when I was playing in goal. He encapsulates his character. He wasn't born out of a serious injury, but rather a desire to get out of practice. So one day when a weak shot hit his mask, he exaggerated the injury to escape to the dressing room. So when Bruins coach Harry Sinden caught him relaxing, he ordered him back onto the ice. And so to add humor, Bruins trainer, whose name was Frosty, so he drew stitch marks on the mask, and a legend was born. And from then on, every time Jerry Cheevers got hit, more stitches were added. Now, guys, this playful approach to a potentially dangerous situation became a hallmark of his personality, and it really served to really show the benefits of wearing a mask. But that is hockey history.
The Kalkaska Battlers presents Hockey History. Catch the Kalkaska Battlers as they compete in the APHL. Check the skills, speed, heart. Make sure you catch a game and experience the thrill of live hockey. Go Battlers!
All right, guys, that's our show for this weekend. We appreciate you all coming on again, commenting, sharing. Thank you to Jim Berenger for attending and being our guest headliner. Remember, we are here every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Thank you, Jordan. Evan is getting excited for SummerSlam. You should say it's the WHL SummerSlam, and then that way you know he's super duper excited.
And yeah, go ahead. It's fine.
I was going to say, any final thoughts before we finish up?
No, I see that we got a lot of people trying to advertise in our little side page. I just thought that was pretty funny. So we just gave you 2 viewers on Steam. Goodbye.
I wouldn't consider our fans cheap. I think they're pretty good because they buy me beers whenever I see them. So I appreciate that.
Well, they got it for all the expenses we got to pay out to bring all these guests in. It's been great. Jim, thank you. If you're catching the show, if you haven't caught Jim, we're going to put him up in our former guest. You can go follow his stuff. He also, I didn't mention, he works for the Professional Hockey Writers Association as well. So if you want to influence him we already think we know who he's going for the rookie vote. We already think we know who he's going for the coach, the GM of the year, executive. So anyway, yeah, it should be really good. And we're always appreciative of all of our guests who come on. It's a little bit easier when we have guests that cover a variety of topics, and Jim's one of those guys. So thanks to Jim for taking the time to be able to come out today. Well, we're just a few minutes into our overtime at Two Guys in Overtime now. We have left the Two Guys in Hockey Talk, but we're ready to wrap up the show. As I say, not Pavel, he has a different word, but it's been a ring-a-ding-dong-dandy in the famous words of Ed Whaling. So we say, in the meantime and in between time.
Keep your sticks on the ice. Stay safe. Have a good night, guys. Cheers.
Cheers.